Well, two major healthcare stories are getting a lot of attention today. First, the Democrats are gearing up for an epic battle with the GOP over the overhaul's funding. They plan to challenge Republicans' efforts to repeal parts of the law by saying if we repeal it, it will add to the national deficit. Leslie Marshall is a syndicated radio talk show host. Andrea Tintaros is a conservative columnist, and both are Fox News contributors. All right, ladies, thanks so much for being with us. Braving the unplowed roads, at least in Andrea's case, to make it into New York. Our viewers are like, quit your whining. Who cares? It's snow. Okay, so here's the deal. The Democrats, there's sort of this rule now, which is pay go. And anything you do legislatively needs to be paid for in the U.S. Congress. And the Republicans are paving the way to say, well, that doesn't apply to repealing health care, even though, according to the Congressional Budget Office, Leslie, if we repeal the health care law, it would cost, I guess, $143 billion. And the Republicans are saying, don't pay any attention to that. We don't have to justify this. And in response to that, you say what?
Well, I say this is hypocrisy because the GOP has promised its constituents and the American people representing all of them when they go to the House and the Senate. Basically, the American people have said, look, we want jobs, turn the economy around, et cetera, et cetera. Polls show the majority of Americans don't want health care reform repealed. And of course, they're using the constitutionality or lack of as an excuse, but they're not offsetting the $143 billion, as you rightly mentioned, Megan. So when they say they're going to reduce cost, create jobs, and not do things in Washington the way they used to be done, well, they're 0 for 3, I guess they would say, in sports, because all three of those won't bode true. Obviously, this does not reduce spending, not offsetting the amount. It does not create jobs. And it is doing, in a sense, backdoor or backroom politics, which the American people on both sides of the aisle don't want.
How about it, Andrea? Is it adding to the deficit and sort of a blind eye that Republicans are turning to the big bill that according to the CBO, repealing health care would cost?
No, not at all. Look, this is laughable listening to Leslie. The CBO has come out and priced the cost of Obamacare at $938 billion. Now, Democrats have always said, well, if we couple this bill with what's called a doctor fix, and that means cutting reimbursements to doctors from Medicare, we can bring the deficit down. Well, Megan, if you remember correctly, Barack Obama kept the doctor fix in place, showing that government can't make these cuts. So that means that CBO came out, they scored it, they scored this bill, they scored it with the doctor fix, and they said that it would even add to the deficit. So I'm just not buying, nobody is buying the fact that somehow Obamacare is going to, lower the deficit and create all these jobs. In fact, we've seen the opposite happen. We've actually seen premiums go up. And nobody, as you pointed out a couple minutes ago, is signing up for this thing because Democrats did not have the guts to make the penalty for not having health care, for not signing up, less than the premium.
You know, the interesting thing, separate and apart from whether this is going to add to the deficit, there are arguments, as the viewers just heard, on both sides, on whether the health care bill adds to the deficit and whether the repeal of the health care bill adds to the deficit. Now we're getting some political punditry suggesting that it is not a good idea for the Republicans to pursue their defund the health care law plan from none other than Fox News contributor and big-brained person Charles Krauthammer. Listen to him on Special Report.
I'm skeptical about taking away the funds because what it will do, it will poke holes in the system. It will make it more chaotic. It will allow some things to be enacted, others to be more slowly or clumsily enacted. And in the end, if health care collapses or if it becomes utterly unworkable, the Democrats will have a way of saying, well, it was all these injuries inflicted by the Republicans that made it not work.
Let me start with Andrea on that one, since she's on Charles's side usually. But what of that criticism, Andrea?
No, I absolutely agree. I wrote a column a couple months ago outlining all the different roadmaps for repeal. And I pointed out that Republicans have got to get off this defund Obamacare. This bill was weaved together by a mad scientist. You cannot just create a giant entitlement program and then not fund it. I mean, the reality is there's lots of subsidies on the books. Frankly, politically, it doesn't make sense. Policy-wise, it doesn't make sense. But Megan, imagine having all these unfunded mandates, all these subsidies going to the poor, and they're not getting funded. I mean, it just really doesn't make a lot of sense. And if you push a lot of Republicans on this, They don't have the answers. Krauthammer is absolutely right.
But Leslie, the Republicans, I mean, in the House in particular, they can vote to repeal the entire law, but they're never going to get that signed by this president. So if you can't, as a practical matter, or shouldn't, as a practical matter, defund it, and you can't get it repealed altogether, realistically, what options do the Republicans have?
Maybe listening to the will of the American people that sent them to Washington to do things differently in Washington, which is, hey, listen to us. The polls show about a third of the people in America want this repealed. Another third want you to leave it alone. And then there are a third that say, we want to have it tweaked. And when you talk about funding or you talk about choices, as Andrea did, with all due respect, and Megan, you know this, my husband's an orthopedic surgeon. I co-own a medical center. So I certainly know about reimbursements and wanting to reduce my husband's income by 23%. So that's not the answer, because that will lead to a reduced quality of care issue. When you have 10,000 Americans becoming 65 years plus a day starting in the new year, that's a very, very dangerous and slippery slope. Without a public option, you really don't have as many people who are able to, quote, opt in. So I don't think how many people can, quote, sign up, so to speak, is a
well, it's an interesting point. I mean, her
issue.
point is essentially that if it's not working, it's not working in part because the law didn't go far enough, didn't have the public option, and so on. And Andrea, that speaks in part to this article that's come out today saying one of the things about the law that's already, let's say, not thriving is that provision of the law that provides coverage for people who have pre-existing conditions.
Right.
Remember, this was a big selling point. You know, if you have a pre-existing condition, you can't get coverage. That's all going to change under the new law. Well, now, according to this report in the Washington Post, in at least a few states, that pre-existing condition coverage is proving, not surprisingly, very costly.
Yeah.
There are questions about whether the $5 billion allotted by Congress to start up those plans is going to be anywhere near sufficient, and that is with the reports coming out that actually very few people are even signing up for it. So you got fewer than expected signing up for it,
Right.
and it's already proving more expensive than expected, Andrea.
Right. So you look at Massachusetts, it's a microcosm for this entire bill. Again, they made the penalty for not signing up less than the premium. So you have people, Megan, who are not signing up because they figure, why not? I'll just pay the penalty since it's less than my yearly insurance premiums. They'll break their leg at the company softball game when they get to the hospital. They'll sign up. They'll pay their little fine. They throw their crutches out. Then they throw their insurance card out. This causes premiums to skyrocket. Another thing that causes premiums to skyrocket, and what we've seen is it's almost like the government saying to GM, you have to require that every American has a Cadillac and it has to have a hybrid engine and all these new things. But you can't raise the sticker price. That's what they've done right now with healthcare reform. Best thing is to open it up over state lines and go after tort reform.
Well, I'll tell you
That
what.
would lower costs.
If you get injured at your company softball resort, you can bill that to workers' comp. So don't worry about
Yeah.
signing up for that new coverage. All right, ladies, I got to go. But thank you both. Good debate as always.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank
Happy
you.
New Year.
And to you.